What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We're on to round 3 of the Rugby Championships, and the teams have been announced going into this round. There's going to be 2 really exciting games. We've already done the preview video for the Wallabies versus Springboks. Feel free to go check out that one after this video. And in this one, we're going to be covering the All Blacks versus the PUMAS, which is going to be a really fun game. I'm looking forward to see where both these teams are at, because last week we saw Argentina have a really good game against Australia, and last week we got to see the All Blacks come back from what was not really a very good game in that first game for them, but they've managed to bounce back in that second game versus South Africa. So both teams going in quite high into this game. Looking forward to see how they get on. So let's start off talking about New Zealand then. Of course, last week they did manage to beat the Springboks. They've managed to draw a level. They've gone back to being the odds-on favourites to win the championship, which is quite interesting. They've done a bit of switching around. I've been keeping a bit of a track on Sky Bet and stuff just to keep up to date with who's meant to be like the favourites going in. And New Zealand look way better. They look like they actually settled their game plan down. South Africa looked a little bit broken in terms of defence in a couple of areas, and New Zealand really managed to do well at spreading the ball wide, get their backs engaged a bit more, actually making ground. We saw them scoring a good amount of points, which was nice to see. So going into this game, what were they going to do? How are they going to switch it up? Well, the answer is they're not really going to switch it up. They've announced the team. There's going to be one change. So we'll have a run through, but it's basically going to be the team we saw last week. So I'm going to go on screen for you guys. So starting off in this front row, we have Ethan de Groot, Taukaeo and Tira Lumax. So the front row last week, I've got to try and cast my mind back now. I think they did much better in terms of the scrummaging last week than we saw in that first game anyway. It didn't really help that people like Joseph Dwebo were giving a lot of penalties away for the Springboks. But I think New Zealand will be happy going into that. Now, Argentina are tough in the scrummaging. They're looking like they're up for a good fight in terms of the scrum, so going to be tough for that front row, but let's see how they get on. In the lock department, then, Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett attain that 4-5 position. They seem to be liking it. Can't complain too much. If your line-out's going to work, then nothing to swap them two around, but nice to see them staying the same. In the back row, the same back row as last week, Shannon Frizzell, Sam Kane and Ardie Savea. Ardie Savea again playing really well a fortnight ago, just getting over the ball. Some of the jackal penalties you just need him to make in that last-ditch effort, just absolutely phenomenal, as well as some of the ball carrying. Sam Kane's still been a bit quiet for me. I would just like to see him a little bit more engaged. They seem to not be utilising him in the way that I'm so used to see Sam Kane playing. He seems to be using a bit more almost like his own little distributor for the forwards, and he's sort of hanging back a little bit and just being a bit of defensive 7. I'm used to seeing him just really get involved, so maybe they'll move towards that. Maybe as a captain they're just wanting to take a little step back, just try and organise the team a bit more, but who knows. In terms of the halfback partnership, Aaron Smith and Richie Mwanga, so still no Bodie Barrett going back into this team, but in all fairness, I think this partnership works well. There's a lot of experience between these lads. I bet Richie Mwanga is probably enjoying having a bit of limelight now, being able to be the first choice in that fly half shirt. Kicking from him is also going really well. I think a couple of people were annoyed last week to not see Jordie Barrett continue kicking, and we saw Richie Mwanga take over, but he's doing really well in terms of that kicking, so nice to see from him. Centre partnership remains the same. David Havili and Rico Ioane, who had a really good game last week. I'm going to keep saying last week. Obviously, I mean the last game. I keep saying the last week. It just feels like no time for me. But Rico Ioane playing absolutely exceptional last week. Very, very impressed. I think I gave him man of match for me in the match report we did after the game. So, well done to him. And then finally in that back 3, we have Caleb Clark, Will Jordan, and Jordie Barrett. So 1 to 15. This is the team that New Zealand feel confident with. There's no reason not to. You managed to went on to beat the world champions at a good game at home. So absolutely no reason why not to check out the same team again. Get a bit more team chemistry together. Just let them intermingle a little bit more. I think that's a really good move. In terms of the replacements then, we are following a similar line here. So we've got Cody Taylor, George Bower, and Fletcher Newell. Fletcher Newell made his debut last week, so second cap going in this week, so looking forward to see him. Tupo Vai and Akira Ioane going to be retaining in that forward replacement section. So 5-3 split. Don't think terrible. We've seen what the Argentina team were doing last week against the Wallabies, how they were using the backs. Very expansive game, very fast game. Recycling the ball, spread it wide, trying to get the backs involved. This might not come down to as much of a forward game as you'd be expecting, so I don't think the 5-3 split's a bad move here. Just to try and combat some of those backs, maybe pick up an injury here or there, because it's going to be a hard gamemanship. We'll see how Caleb Clark's hip carries on, whether he's going to knock anyone else out this week, but I think probably the 5-3 split's slightly better for them. And then finally the replacement backs, Finlay Christie, Stephen Profiter, hopefully I'm going to be pronouncing his name correctly, not a name I know, but making his debut. And then finally Quinn Tupaia. So, a couple of big talks here. No Beauden Barrett at all. I haven't actually caught up on the news. I probably should have done that before making this video, but I don't know if he's maybe that injury that he sustained in the big sort of collision in the air. Maybe that's come back to be a bit worse than maybe they thought. Maybe they're trying to mix it up a bit, allow someone new into the team, so that's nice. But I think Richie Mo'unga will absolutely be relishing the opportunity to play, a good sort of 60, 70-minute game starting for this All Blacks team. And then Quinta Pai coming on in that second half. Yeah, that seems to be what they seem to be going for now. Quinta Pai coming on the second half. I like Quinta Pai. I think he's a really hard runner. Again, I feel like I'm not really sure the way it switches up. A couple of people have mentioned that David Havili's comfortable being like fullback, but also at centre. Rico Ioane can do the wingers and also centre. Quinta Pai. When I think of Quinta Pai, I chuck him at inside centre. Someone might be able to correct me down that in the comment section. But it might have been nice here again, just to maybe pull Rico Ioane off. Maybe give some other people a bit of a chance to get in here. Put Rico Ioane on the bench, then you have cover for both the wing and centre. I don't know. What do I know? I'm not some sort of coach for the All Blacks. But there we go, guys. So the New Zealand team, to me, looking good. Looking pretty much the same as we saw against that South Africa side. And if they can just have the right team game plan together, I don't see why New Zealand can't go on to win this one. Now, conversely, going on to Argentina. After a really good win against Australia, really surprising to a lot of people to see just how well they did against that Australia team. They're going to be going on now playing New Zealand. They've lost that home advantage now. They're not only going to be losing that advantage, they've also decided to go for a massive team switch up in a lot of big areas, to be fair. Not so much the forwards, but the backs specifically. Some of the players playing extremely well last week have been moved around an awful lot. So be very interesting to see how these teams get on facing each other. So starting off in this front row, we have Gallo, Julian Montoya, and Sclavi comes in that prop shirt. Now, I do think they had Gomez Cordella last week. So yeah, maybe we're switching up. They're just trying to find that right team again. Still building towards a World Cup. This is a big game. This could be a game we see very late on in the World Cup. I've got to try and think off the top of my head. I feel like this may even be, if these teams won all their games, you may see them actually meeting in the final or semi-final. So, you've got to take these games seriously. These are the games you could be facing in a World Cup. So mixing up your team, getting people used to playing the All Blacks, I don't think is a bad move. In the lock department, Alemano and Lavanini, the two positions really that they're just holding these same people. It's really nice to see a bit of consistency in this team, considering how much they do swap around the backs. The forwards looking pretty committed, and the lineouts were working quite well for them last week. In the back row, then, we're going to be remaining exactly the same again. Gonzalez, Kramer, and Matera. All three of which are actually playing really well. Pablo Matera and Marcos Kramer have been doing an awful lot more ball-in-hand running, which is really nice to see. Not just being, defensively, we've seen that Pablo Matera is now over in the Crusaders. Obviously picked up a lot from New Zealand-style play. He will be playing against a lot of lads he plays with at the Crusaders. But we've seen him the last couple of games against the Wallabies, running with that ball in hand, getting himself over the try line, really nice to see. And Kramer's been keeping those penalties down. One of the big things against him for me, always been how many penalties he has against him. But I think he's been improving really in this championship, so nice to see. In the halfback partnership, Bertrano and Carreras remain in that 9-10 position. Yeah, I think this is probably the right move. I really like Bertrano at the minute. I think he's playing really well. Carreras has been really showing off in this fly half shirt. A lot of people thought losing Sanchez was going to be a real bad thing for Argentina, and Carreras has absolutely stepped in, so really nice to see. In the centre partnership then, Orlando and Matias Moroni are going to be moving into this centre partnership now. So mixing up these backs a little bit, trying to find the order they want to go in. Same going for the back three here. Lucio Cinti comes in on the left wing. Boffelli's going to remain on that right wing, and Juan Cruz Malia will be retaining that fullback. Now, again, the strike moves they were using, some of these backs were really nice to see. We saw Boffelli scoring awfully lot of points last week. Really nice to see. Orlando was quiet when we saw him the first time around, so I'm hoping he gets a bit more into it. Matias Moroni, I think, was a good switch last week, so I think that's a good move. And then Mali is covering that backfield really well. I think the backs for Argentina are looking really solid. This is a good Argentina team. I've been getting more and more impressed the more we've got to see them, so really hoping they can bring this game to New Zealand and actually put them under some pressure. It was only, 2 years ago we saw Argentina actually beat New Zealand, so if they can just get back to that level, no reason they couldn't do it again. In terms of the replacements then, we have Sochino, not a name I know, so nice to see a new name in there for me. Vivas and Bello. So I've actually just gone back to have a look at the team that was announced last week, and there is actually an awful lot of switch-ups in this bench. I didn't realise there was this many switches. I only really looked at the starting 15 before doing this video. So Bello coming in there along with Guido Petty and Santiago Godrona coming back into the team, which I'm really hoping to see him get involved a bit more in the game. They've also gone for the 5-3, so they're obviously wanting to use these backs a lot more as well. I like seeing the way that Argentina are beginning to use those backs and not just being this team that is known for doing like the forwards, just the scrums and the mauls. They're actually beginning to engage these really talented backs now, which is really nice to see. It's a bit of a shame we're not going to see Imhoff come in, because I thought he had a really good game. I can't remember if he picked up an injury, actually. That might be why he's out for this one. And then, like I said, in the replacement backs, we have Cubelli, Albornoz, and Santiago Cordero. So, again, going to be able to mix up some of these players. There'll be that late switch later on where Cordero will come on. So although I said, all those positive things about the Argentina team, the starting 15 is looking pretty good, but the bench might be a little bit undercapped going into this. I mean, people like Guido Petty and people are still going to have good caps behind them. But a couple of those front row replacements, we could begin to see them just drop off in that second half, like we saw in that first game against the Wallabies. If pressure starts going on to Argentina, they seem to just start conceding penalties, so they're going to have to try and really bring this fight to New Zealand in order to not let that happen. So in terms of a score prediction then, what do we think going into this game? I think the advantage at home and the way that New Zealand have been playing in the last game, I think I'm going to be leaning towards New Zealand for this one. I could see maybe quite a few people leaning towards New Zealand. I'm not sure about that bench for Argentina. So I'm going to say New Zealand to win, and I'm going to say New Zealand to win by... I'm going to go 16. I'm going to go quite high. I feel like New Zealand will be riding high off that win over South Africa. Now playing at home, having that advantage. This team's not necessarily strong for the Argentinians in terms of the bench. I feel that that late game might begin to spread out the game. So I'm going to go for a New Zealand win. But of course, guys, what do I know about rugby? So make sure you guys drop down in the comments your thoughts about the team, your thoughts about the game, what you think the score prediction will be, all that fun stuff. Do remember to put your Super Brew teams in if you are part of the leagues, because you have quite a short turnaround time before we get to play these games on Saturday. It's really early here in the UK. First game kicks off like 6:30 in the morning, so I've got to do mine on the Friday night and just hope no one goes out with an injury during training. And of course, guys, we are getting very, very close to that 2,000 subscriber mark. So if you've tuned into the channel, you're new to the channel, just feel free to press that subscribe button. It's super quick, it's free, it's easy. You can always unsubscribe later if you really want to, but why would you want to? Because come on, the content's great on the channel. But I hope you've all enjoyed this one today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.